In the heart of Liberty Hill, a town where the scent of jasmine mingled with the lingering aroma of Sunday dinners, and resilience was woven into every brick and every smile, the air thrummed with an almost palpable anticipation. This wasn't just any ordinary day, it was the eve of a new chapter, a testament to the enduring human spirit. Reverend Elijah Dixon, a man whose booming laughter was as infectious as his profound wisdom, was finally, truly, finding love again. For years, since the unexpected passing of his beloved wife, Queen, a quiet solitude had settled over his home, a silent echo of loss that even his vibrant sermons couldn't quite fill. But now, with Serafina Dubois by his side, a light had rekindled in his eyes, a promise of warmth that seemed to envelop the entire community. Serafina, she was a vision, a whirlwind of grace and charm. Her smile could melt glaciers, her voice a soothing balm that instantly put you at ease. She had, in what seemed like mere weeks, effortlessly integrated herself into the very fabric of Liberty Hill. She volunteered at the community center, organized children's reading groups, and her thoughtful gestures were endless. The women of the church adored her, seeing in her a beacon of hope for their beloved reverend. The men respected her poise and intelligence. She was, to everyone, the perfect match for Elijah, a radiant angel sent to heal a grieving heart. The collective sigh of relief in the town was almost audible. Our reverend, our rock, was finally whole again. But beneath the surface of this glittering new beginning, a subtle, unsettling discord began to hum, almost imperceptible to the adoring eyes of Liberty Hill. It was a whisper, a mere shift in the atmospheric pressure that only the most attuned could sense, and young Malachi, Elijah's only son, was attuned. At just 10 years old, Malachi was a child of profound intuition, a sensitive soul who felt the world with an intensity far beyond his years. He carried the gentle strength of his late mother, Queen, a quiet wisdom in his large, observant eyes. He was, in his own small world, the king of his emotional kingdom, fiercely guarding the sacred space he shared with his father. And something about Serafina, for all her dazzling charm, made that space feel cold. When his father was around, Serafina was sunshine personified. Her hand would linger affectionately on Malachi's shoulder, her voice sweet as honey, showering him with compliments. "Malach, you're such a bright boy," she'd coo, "so much like your wonderful father." But the moment Reverend Elijah stepped out of the room, to answer a call, to greet a parishioner, to simply turn his back, the warmth would drain from her eyes. The smile would tighten, revealing a hard, brittle edge. Her voice would drop, laced with a chilling disdain. "Honestly, Malachi," she'd snap once, after he'd accidentally spilled a drop of juice on the spotless kitchen counter, "must you always be so clumsy? You're more of a burden than a blessing, aren't you?" Her words, delivered with a quiet venom, sliced through Malachi's young heart, leaving invisible wounds. Another time, he distinctly remembered her accidentally tripping him as he walked past, her foot catching his ankle just enough to send him stumbling, followed by a saccharine apology that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was a classic playbook for those who seek to control or exploit, charm in public, cruelty in private. And for a child, trapped in that dynamic, it was a silent, terrifying war. Have you ever felt that chill down your spine, that gut feeling telling you something isn't right, even when everyone else is mesmerized by a shiny facade? That's what young Malachi felt, a feeling many of us, especially those who've walked through fire, know all too well. He saw the shift, the subtle flicker in her gaze, the way her kindness evaporated like morning mist when his father wasn't present. He tried, oh how he tried, to voice his fears to Reverend Elijah. "Dad," he'd begin, his voice small, "Serafina, she's different when you're not here." But Elijah, caught in the intoxicating current of rediscovered love, and perhaps a deep-seated desire to move past his own grief, would gently brush aside Malachi's concerns. "Son," he'd say, patting Malachi's head, "it's just a big change for all of us. You're a sensitive boy and you're just adjusting. Serafina loves you, I promise." His father's loving dismissal was a heavy weight on Malachi's young shoulders. It left him feeling isolated, unheard, and profoundly alone. Slowly, subtly, Malachi began to withdraw. his bright spirit dimming, his laughter less frequent. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that a shadow had crept into their lives, and he was the only one who could see it. Little did he know, this subtle unease was merely the first ripple of a much larger, more terrifying storm gathering on the horizon. This new beginning, so celebrated by Liberty Hill, was about to become the stage for a deception so profound, it would shake the very foundations of faith and family. Malachi's small warnings, dismissed as childish jitters by his father, slowly curdled into a chilling certainty. Serafina's cruelty, initially subtle, began to sharpen, like a venomous fang slowly extending. The accidental trips became more deliberate, the veiled threats more pointed. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at school, Malachi had slumped onto the couch, forgetting to kick off his muddy sneakers. Serafina, emerging from the kitchen with a glass of water, paused. Her eyes, usually so soft when Elijah was near, hardened into chips of ice. "Malachi," she purred, her voice deceptively sweet, "do you think your father works hard to keep this house clean just so you can drag the outside in?" Before he could answer, she tripped over his outstretched leg, the glass of water splashing onto his face and soaking the couch. "Oh, my dear boy," she shrieked, instantly switching to her angelic persona as Elijah walked in. "Are you all right? I'm so sorry, I must be so clumsy." Elijah, of course, rushed to comfort Serafina, while Malachi was left to clean the mess, his heart aching with injustice and a burning sense of helplessness. This was Serafina's game, making Malachi feel like a burden, worthless, even crazy for perceiving her true nature. She'd gaslight him, twisting his words, making him doubt his own memories. "Malachi, you must be imagining things," she'd say, with a saccharine smile after a particularly harsh verbal jab. "I would never say such a thing. Perhaps you're just tired." The emotional isolation was crushing. His beloved father, once his closest confidant, was now a distant, smiling figure blinded by the dazzling light of Serafina. Malachi's bright spirit, once as vibrant as the stained glass windows in his father's church, began to dim. He stopped drawing the fantastical worlds he once dreamed of. His sketchbook lay untouched. His once melodic hums, echoing his mother's favorite hymns, ceased. Even his grades, usually impeccable, began to slip, a silent cry for help that no one seemed to hear. But within that dimmed light, a flicker of something fierce remained. It was the unwavering love for his father, a king protecting his realm. Malachi, now constantly on edge, began observing Serafina with a detective's eye, a skill he'd picked up from his favorite mystery novels. He noticed the furtive glances at her phone, the hushed whispers into the receiver when she thought no one was listening, the way she'd flinch when Elijah would jokingly ask about her family. There were too many inconsistencies, too many pieces that didn't fit the beautiful puzzle she presented to the world. Have you ever been in that excruciating position, seeing the obvious red flags, the flashing warning lights, while everyone around you is caught in the blinding glare of a seemingly perfect illusion? It's a classic playbook for those who seek to control or exploit. The charming facade, the subtle put-downs, the way someone acts differently behind closed doors. And for a child, trapped in that dynamic, it's a silent war, a battle fought alone. This isn't just about a child's intuition, it's a profound lesson in listening to that inner voice, that gut feeling that often screams the truth even when our minds, or our hearts, are trying to rationalize it away. So often we overlook these signs, blinded by hope, by desperation, by the sheer desire to believe in the fairy tale. For Reverend Elijah, mourning his beloved queen, Serafina was a healing balm, a promise of light after years of darkness, and in his yearning for that light, he missed the shadows lengthening behind him. The night before the wedding, the air crackled with a nervous energy that kept Malachi wide awake. From his bed he could hear the faint murmur of voices from his father's study, where Serafina was supposedly finalizing wedding details. He crept out of bed, drawn by an instinct he couldn't ignore. The door was ajar, and through the sliver of light he saw Serafina on the phone, her back to him. Her voice, usually so melodious, was now a cold, metallic whisper. "No, Kane, I told you. Everything is in place. The $5 million policy is signed, sealed, delivered. After tomorrow, it's just a matter of disposal." Malachi's blood ran cold. Disposal. He pressed his ear closer, his heart hammering against his ribs. "The boy?" Malachi? Seraphina's voice was laced with a chilling disdain. He's a nuisance, too intuitive for his own good. A wild card, I tell you, but Elijah trusts me implicitly. He'd never believe his son over his beloved. A gasp caught in Malachi's throat. Disposal? They were planning to kill his father. The pieces slammed together with horrifying clarity, the coldness, the secrets, the accidents. Seraphina wasn't just a two-faced stepmother, she was a murderer, a viper coiled in their home. But who was Cain? And why was she so sure his father wouldn't believe him? A frantic energy surged through Malachi's small frame, overriding his fear. He had to find proof. He remembered seeing Seraphina frequently on her laptop. Slipping back to his room, he waited until he heard her footsteps receding, then stealthily entered the study. His fingers trembled as he navigated her laptop, the screen a glowing beacon in the darkness. And then he found it. A folder labeled Insurance. Inside, not only was the massive life insurance policy document, but also photos. Photos of Seraphina, laughing, arms linked with the very man she'd called Cain. And the ultimate gut-wrenching twist, tucked away in a sub-feeder, was a scan of a marriage certificate. Seraphina Dubois, married to Cain from a state far away. She was a bigamist, a cold-blooded schemer. Malachi stared at the screen, tears blurring his vision, not of fear, but of a profound, overwhelming resolve. His father, the kindest man he knew, was walking into a death trap, and only he, a 10-year-old boy, stood between Elijah and this deadly deception. Sometimes, the most profound truths are found in the darkest corners, revealed by the most unexpected heroes. When your gut screams, listen. It might just be protecting your spirit, or even your life. The next few hours stretched into an agonizing eternity, each tick of the clock bringing them closer to a disaster only he could prevent. The morning light, usually a comfort, felt like a spotlight on his terrifying secret. The wedding was hours away, and Malachi knew he had to act. He had the proof, the chilling words echoing in his ears. Now, he just needed the courage to unleash the truth, no matter the cost. The morning dawned, crisp and radiant, a stark contrast to the churning storm in Malachi's young heart. The air in Liberty Hill buzzed with an almost feverish joy. Folks bustled into the elegant St. Jude's Chapel, their faces alight with smiles, their murmurs a symphony of eager anticipation. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, painting the aisle in kaleidoscopic hues, a perfect, almost mocking backdrop to the impending disaster. The organ music, usually a soothing balm, now felt like a relentless drumbeat, counting down to the moment Malachi dreaded, yet knew he had to face. At the altar, Reverend Elijah Dixon stood tall in his impeccably tailored tuxedo, a nervous, hopeful smile playing on his lips. His eyes, usually filled with the wisdom of a seasoned pastor, now held a boyish excitement as he gazed towards the chapel entrance. He was about to embark on a new life, a new chapter. He was, to Malachi, a king about to walk into a viper's nest, and Malachi, clutching a crumpled printout of the evidence in his sweaty palm, felt his own heart hammer against his ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Every whisper from the guests, every rustle of silk, amplified the deafening silence of his own terrifying secret. The weight of it pressed down on him, a crushing burden that threatened to suffocate him. Would his father believe him? Would anyone? The fear of being wrong, of publicly humiliating his beloved dad, was immense. But the greater fear, the horrifying image of his father's loving eyes clouded by death, was a chilling motivator. And then, the music swelled, grand and triumphant, signaling her arrival. Seraphina Dubois glided down the aisle, a vision in white lace, her veil shimmering, her smile radiant. She looked like an angel, every inch the perfect bride, utterly oblivious to the storm brewing, to the small, determined boy who held her darkest secrets. Her gaze, as she reached the altar, met Elijah's. A look of profound love and devotion exchanged between them. It was a picture-perfect moment, the kind that brought tears to the eyes of the congregation. Imagine that moment, the narrator's voice would interject, every eye turning, every whisper ceasing, the air thick with disbelief. Would you have the courage to stand up? to risk everything when the stakes were so incredibly high, when your entire world hung in the balance. For Malachi, this wasn't just a wedding, it was a do-or-die mission. This wasn't just about exposing a lie, it was about saving a life. The ceremony proceeded, a blur of traditional vows and hopeful pronouncements. Malachi felt time stretching and contracting, each second an eternity. He watched Serafina's flawless profile, remembering the coldness in her eyes, the venom in her voice. He clutched the evidence tighter. This was it. The moment was coming. Then, the officiant's voice, clear and resonant, filled the chapel. If anyone here can show just cause why this couple may not lawfully be wed, speak now, or forever hold your peace. A profound silence descended, thick and heavy, broken only by the rustle of leaves outside. The silence stretched, eternal and absolute, everyone waiting for the ceremonial moment to pass. And then, cutting through the hushed reverence like a sharp blade, a small but incredibly clear voice echoed through the chapel. "Stop the wind." Every head snapped towards the source. All eyes landed on Malachi, standing in the aisle, his small frame trembling, his face pale but resolute. Reverend Elijah's head whipped around, his expression a mixture of shock, confusion, and then, slowly, a dawning anger. "Malachi," he whispered, his voice laced with disbelief and betrayal, "what are you doing?" Malachi took a deep breath, clutching the crumpled papers, his voice cracking but firm. "Dad," he began, his eyes locked on his father's. "Serafina. She's not who you think she is. She's planning to hurt you, to kill you for your life insurance." A collective gasp rippled through the chapel. Serafina's face, moments ago serene, now contorted into a mask of pure fury, a flicker of true evil breaking through her angelic facade. Elijah's face hardened. "Malachi, that's enough. What nonsense is this? You're upsetting everyone." His tone, usually so gentle, was sharp, dismissive. It was the moment Malachi had dreaded, the confirmation of his father's blind faith. But then, the most crucial twist occurred. Serafina, her composure finally shattered by the unexpected public exposure, leaned towards Malachi, her eyes blazing with undisguised hatred. "You spoiled brat," she hissed, her voice low but piercing enough to carry in the stunned silence. "You've ruined everything, you rotten little pest." That was it, that single venomous utterance. The sweet, loving Serafina, the perfect bride, had vanished, replaced by a monstrous stranger. Elijah's eyes, fixed on her, widened in horrified recognition. He saw the coldness, the cruelty, the true face of the woman he was about to marry. The mask had fallen, and the serpent's true colors were vividly, terrifyingly exposed for all to see. In that instant, every dismissal, every whispered warning from Malachi crashed into Elijah's consciousness with the force of a tidal wave. "Serafina," he whispered, his voice raw with betrayal. With a shriek of rage and defeat, Serafina clutched her dress and bolted from the chapel, a flurry of white lace disappearing down the aisle. The beautiful illusion shattered into a million pieces. People gasped, some screamed. The once joyful chapel erupted into chaos. Elijah, still reeling, stared after her retreating form, then at Malachi, his eyes filled with dawning horror and a profound, agonizing understanding. She is telling the truth, isn't she, son?" This was the truth revealing itself, often in the most dramatic and unexpected ways. And sometimes the most dangerous people are those who wear the most convincing masks. Malachi, trembling but victorious, nodded, then extended the crumpled papers. "And I have proof, Dad." About her husband Cain and the insurance. In that moment, surrounded by shocked faces, Elijah Dixon, the pillar of Liberty Hill, no longer saw a spoiled brat, but a courageous young king who had just saved his life. His hand, shaking, reached for his phone. The dream of a new beginning had just been brutally crushed, but in its ruins, the unbreakable bond between a father and son was about to be reforged, stronger than ever before. The stage was set for the painful yet ultimately redemptive aftermath. The sudden, jarring silence in St. Jude's Chapel after Serafina's enraged shriek was quickly overtaken by a flurry of gasps, whispers, and outright cries of shock. Serafina, Her beautiful white dress, a blur of malevolence, had vanished through the chapel doors, a phantom of deceit, escaping the very place she sought to consecrate her lies. Her accomplice, Cain, who had been discreetly seated near the back, attempted a hasty retreat, but the sheer chaos he caused drew immediate attention. Within moments, the sharp, decisive voices of men from the congregation, many of whom were retired law enforcement or community leaders, cut through the din. Cain, caught in a tangle of ropes of a quickly pulled-down decorative arch, found himself swiftly apprehended, his attempts to resist futile against the righteous anger of a betrayed community. Elijah Dixon, the revered pastor, stood at the altar, rooted to the spot. The bouquet of white roses that had just moments ago been placed so lovingly in the hands of his betrayer now lay discarded at his feet, wilting symbols of a dream shattered. The initial shock on his face slowly contorted into a profound, gut-wrenching realization. Betrayal. It hit him like a physical blow, stripping him bare. The promises, the loving glances, the shared laughter, all of it a meticulously crafted illusion designed to exploit his vulnerability. He had allowed this serpent into his home, into his heart, and almost into his family's sacred trust. The thought that he had not only been blind, but that his blindness had endangered his precious son sent a wave of nausea through him. He saw Malachi standing there, still clutching the crumpled papers, a testament to his lonely courage, and a deep, searing shame washed over Elijah. Have you ever experienced that kind of profound betrayal? That moment when the rug is pulled out from under you, and the person you trusted most reveals themselves to be a monster. It's a pain that cuts deeper than any physical wound, shaking the very foundation of your perception of reality. It forces you to question your own judgment, to scrutinize every memory, every word. For Elijah, this wasn't just a broken engagement, it was a devastating assault on his faith in humanity, and perhaps even a challenge to his spiritual resilience. But in that moment of overwhelming vulnerability, a lifeline was extended. Malachi, tears streaming down his face but his small shoulders squared, met his father's gaze. He didn't need words. His eyes, clear and unwavering, held only concern and love. And in those eyes, Elijah saw not just his son, but his Savior. He knelt right there in the chaos of the chapel, pulling Malachi into a fierce, desperate embrace. "My son," he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. "My brave, brave boy. Forgive me. Forgive me for not listening. Forgive me for being so blind." It was a tearful, raw apology, a silent promise etched into the very core of their being. In that embrace, the shattered pieces of their relationship began to knit back together, held by the strong, unwavering thread of unconditional love. The foundation, built on truth and vulnerability, was being rebuilt, stronger and more authentic than ever before. Malachi was no longer just his father's son. He was his protector, his hero, the one who had literally saved his life. The immediate aftermath was a blur of flashing lights and stern voices. Elijah, still reeling but resolute, made the call to 911, his voice grim as he reported the full extent of Serafina's heinous plot. Law enforcement, swift and efficient, secured the scene. Cain, identified as a known con artist with a history of similar scams, was taken into custody. The subsequent investigation quickly unearthed Serafina's true identity, not Serafina Dubois, but Sarah Connor, a master manipulator with a chillingly long rap sheet of fraudulent marriages, insurance scams and shattered lives across multiple states. But here's a twist that few expected. Sarah Connor wasn't just a solo operator. As the net tightened around her and Cain, it was revealed they were part of a far larger, more sophisticated criminal network, specializing in targeting vulnerable, affluent individuals, particularly those who had recently experienced loss. Sarah, with her chameleon-like ability to adapt to any persona, was their most lethal weapon. Her trail of destruction stretched back years, leaving behind not just financial ruin, but emotional devastation for countless unsuspecting victims. This wasn't just about Elijah's $5 million. It was about a systemic web of deceit, and Elijah and Malachi had inadvertently helped expose a much larger threat. The revelation brought a new wave of shock, but also a strange sense of vindication for Elijah. He wasn't just a fool who fell for a pretty face. He was a target of a calculated, professional predator. The shame began to recede, replaced by a fierce resolve to heal and to use his experience to warn others. The police informed him that Sarah Connor had vanished, a ghost disappearing into the shadows of her past aliases. The manhunt began, a nationwide pursuit for the woman who had brought such darkness to Liberty Hill. For now, however, the immediate crisis had passed. The serpent had been driven from their home, but the journey of healing for both father and son was only just beginning. It was a long road, fraught with pain and uncertainty, but as Elijah looked at Malachi holding his son's hand tightly, he knew they wouldn't walk it alone. The weeks that followed the fateful non-wedding at St. Jude's Chapel were a blur of police interrogations, hushed community whispers, and the arduous task of piecing back together a life that had been ripped apart. Cain, Seraphina's accomplice, sang like a canary under interrogation, providing damning evidence that corroborated every chilling detail of Malachi's testimony. His trial was swift, his conviction absolute, and he was sentenced to a long term in a federal prison, a stark reminder that deceit, no matter how meticulously planned, eventually unravels. Justice, in that regard, was served. But the phantom of Sarah Connor, the woman formerly known as Seraphina Dubois, still haunted them. She had vanished without a trace, her aliases forming a labyrinth of deception. Elijah found himself checking the locks more often, his sleep often disturbed by fleeting shadows. Malachi, despite his immense bravery, still flinched at sudden movements, and his vivid dreams were sometimes punctuated by the cold glint in Seraphina's eyes, the knowledge that she was still out there, a venomous snake, uncoiled and ready to strike again, was a persistent, chilling hum beneath the surface of their fragile peace. Months crawled by, marked by the slow, painstaking process of healing. Elijah, with Malachi often by his side, found solace in his ministry, pouring his pain into sermons that resonated with newfound authenticity. He spoke of betrayal, of forgiveness, of the difficult road to trust, drawing from a wellspring of personal experience that captivated his congregation. He and Malachi started therapy together, a commitment they both embraced. In those quiet, confidential sessions, they learned to unravel the knots of fear and guilt. Elijah confessed the depth of his shame for not listening to his son, for his own blind spots. Malachi, in turn, bravely articulated the terror of being disbelieved, of carrying such a heavy burden alone. It was in these shared vulnerabilities that their bond, already forged in fire, became iron wrong. Healing isn't a destination, it's a journey, their therapist often reminded them. It requires courage, vulnerability, and sometimes the guiding hand of those who understand the complex landscape of the human heart. Don't be afraid to seek help. It was a lesson Elijah, once so proud and self-reliant, was finally learning to embrace. Then, one quiet afternoon, as a gentle rain pattered against the parsonage windows, the phone rang. It was Detective Davies, the lead investigator on Sarah Connor's case. His voice, usually gruff, was tinged with a grim solemnity. "Reverend Dixon," he began, "we've found her, Sarah Connor. She was found dead this morning in a motel room hundreds of miles from Liberty Hill. Appears to be a suicide." The words hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. Elijah felt a strange, complex wave wash over him. Not relief, not triumph, but a chilling sense of closure. Malachi, who had been quietly drawing at the kitchen table, looked up, sensing the shift in his father's demeanor. Elijah knelt, taking his son's hand, and gently delivered the news. "She's gone, Dad," Malachi whispered, his eyes wide. "Yes," Elijah replied, his voice soft. "The police believe she took her own life." The silence that followed was profound. For Malachi, the primary emotion wasn't triumph, but a strange mixture of relief and a haunting sadness for a life so tragically, wickedly wasted. "Does that mean she can't hurt anyone anymore?" he asked, a flicker of peace in his eyes. "No, son, she can't," Elijah confirmed, pulling him into a comforting embrace. But here's the twist that added another layer of chilling complexity to Sarah Connor's final act. The detective had mentioned a note, a brief, cryptic note found beside her. Elijah, his voice strained, read it aloud from the police report. "The game is over. He found me. Tell him I win." Malachi asked, his intuitive mind immediately seizing on the word. "Who is he, Dad?" Elijah frowned, a new wave of unease rippling through him. The police had no further information. Was it Kane? Unlikely, given he was incarcerated. Was it someone else from her criminal network? A more powerful, shadowy figure who felt betrayed by her exposure? The note, rather than bringing absolute closure, opened up a new, unsettling question. Sarah Connor, the master manipulator, had, in her final act, left a last, haunting echo of her intricate, dangerous world. Even in death, she maintained an element of control, a final, ambiguous message. It was a stark reminder that some evils leave scars far beyond their immediate impact. The death of Sarah Connor, while bringing a definitive end to the immediate threat, forced Elijah and Malachi to confront deeper questions about human nature, forgiveness, and the long shadow of past wounds. It meant they no longer had to live in fear of her return. The physical threat was gone, but the emotional scars, the questioning of trust, remained. It was a tragic end, not a joyous victory. It closed a chapter, but it didn't erase the lessons learned, nor the quiet, lingering questions about the dark corners of the human heart. They understood now, more than ever, that sometimes the true weight of justice isn't just in punishment, but in the painful, necessary process of understanding and healing. And for them, that process was ongoing, leading them towards a future where trust would be hard-earned, but profoundly cherished. The news of Sarah Connor's death, while unsettling in its finality, brought a profound sense of quiet relief to Elijah and Malachi. The constant gnawing fear that she might reappear, that the serpent might strike again, finally receded. It was a liberation, not from grief, but from a pervasive terror. But even as the threat vanished, the deep emotional scars remained, a landscape altered by the earthquake of betrayal. Their path forward wasn't a sudden leap into sunshine, but a deliberate, step-by-step journey of rebuilding. Their commitment to therapy became the bedrock of their recovery. It wasn't always easy. There were sessions filled with tears, with frustrated silences, and with the painful retelling of memories. Elijah grappled with the shame of his blindness, the guilt of putting Malachi in such peril. Malachi, in turn, worked through the fear of not being believed, the quiet terror of seeing darkness where others saw only light. Their therapist, a kind and insightful woman named Dr. Anya Sharma, helped them navigate this complex terrain. She taught them tools for communication, for active listening, and for rebuilding trust not just in others but in themselves. Trust, she would say, is like a fine tapestry. Once torn, it takes meticulous, patient work to reweave, but when it's done, it's often stronger than before, marked by the very threads that held it together. And rebuild they did. Elijah, once a man who often delegated household chores and relied on others, now immersed himself in the simple, profound rituals of fatherhood. He started cooking dinner with Malachi, laughing as they experimented with new recipes, some more successful than others. They began hiking the trails around Liberty Hill, Malachi pointing out every bird and unusual rock formation, Elijah listening intently, truly present. Sundays weren't just about sermons anymore. They were about lazy mornings, shared breakfasts, and unhurried conversations about everything and nothing. Elijah learned to ask Malachi about his day at school, not just about his grades, but about his friends, his worries, his dreams. He learned to truly listen to the unspoken nuances in his son's voice, to see the world through Malachi's remarkably perceptive eyes. This was the true rebuilding of their kingdom, not a grand public declaration but an intimate, daily act of love and attention. Malachi, no longer burdened by the weight of a terrible secret, blossomed. His laughter returned, bright and clear, echoing through the parsonage. His sketchbook, once abandoned, was now filled with intricate drawings of brave knights and cunning villains, channeling his experiences into imaginative play. His keen observational skills, once a source of terror, now became a source of quiet strength. He started helping his father organize community events, his eye for detail proving invaluable. He even joined a local debate club, his clear voice and logical arguments a testament to his innate intelligence and newfound confidence. And here's a beautiful twist, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The community of Liberty Hill, far from shunning Elijah or Malachi, rallied around them with an outpouring of love and solidarity. They brought meals, offered support, and stood as a unified front against the shadows of deceit. Neighbors who had once been merely acquaintances became steadfast friends. The shared trauma, instead of fracturing them, had deepened their collective bond. "This is the power of community," Elijah would often say in his revitalized sermons, his voice now imbued with a profound humility, the lifeline that holds us up when we feel like drowning. It's a testament to the strength within us and the strength we find in each other, especially in communities that have faced adversity time and again. Elijah's ministry too was profoundly transformed. He no longer preached abstract lessons from the pulpit. He spoke from the raw, lived experience of his own vulnerability, his own mistakes, his own journey to forgiveness. His sermons on trust, betrayal, and the enduring power of family resonated with a magnetic authenticity that drew new congregants and deepened the faith of old ones. He shared his story not to dwell on the pain, but to illuminate the path to recovery, to underscore the profound truth that even after the deepest betrayals, healing is possible. He became an even more authentic leader, his vulnerability a source of strength, his honesty a beacon. Elijah also cautiously re-entered the world of dating, but this time with a profound shift in his approach. He wasn't seeking a replacement for Queen, nor was he rushing into commitment. He prioritized genuine connection, shared values, and, most importantly, Malachi's comfort and approval. He learned to be patient, to observe, to truly get to know someone before allowing them into their small, precious kingdom. It was a slower, more deliberate process, built on lessons learnt from the fire. From the ashes of betrayal, a stronger bond had indeed risen. True happiness, they realized, wasn't found in a fairy tale ending, but in the profound, unwavering love of family and the courage to face life's storms together. The kingdom of Elijah and Malachi, once nearly brought to ruin by a serpent, was now being rebuilt, brick by brick, with the unbreakable mortar of truth, forgiveness, and an enduring, profound love. And in the heart of that young king, a new legacy had been forged, not of gold, but of unwavering love and courageous truth, preparing them for whatever tomorrow might bring. The sun dipped below the horizon over Liberty Hill, painting the sky in hues of fiery orange and soft lavender. The scent of evening primroses mingled with the distant laughter of children playing, a symphony of simple joys. Life in the parsonage, once fraught with hidden dangers and unspoken fears, had settled into a rhythm of gentle routines and profound appreciation. The whispers of deceit that once haunted their home had been replaced by the quiet hum of healing and the steady beat of an unwavering love. Elijah Dixon, the revered pastor, sat on the porch swing, its gentle creak a comforting cadence. Malachi, now a little taller, a little more confident, was nestled beside him, engrossed in a new mystery novel. They didn't need to speak to feel the deep connection between them. It was a bond forged in fire, tempered by betrayal, and solidified by unwavering courage. We've seen how Malachi's story unfolded, a testament to several profound truths. First, the incredible importance of listening to our intuition, that quiet, insistent voice that often speaks when our logic or our longing tries to drown it out. So many of us, especially when vulnerable or seeking connection, can fall prey to the dazzling facades people present. We learn that sometimes the most dangerous deceptions are spun by those who seem the most perfect. Second, Malachi's courage reminds us that bravery isn't always about grand gestures or physical strength. Sometimes it's about a 10-year-old boy, trembling but resolute, standing up for the truth when everyone else is mesmerized by a lie. His actions uncovered not just a criminal plot, but also the dangerous reality of blindly trusting in the face of glaring red flags. It was a brutal awakening for Elijah, but one that ultimately saved his life and deepened his relationship with his son beyond measure. And finally, their journey taught us about the arduous, yet ultimately rewarding road to healing. It's a process of acknowledging pain, seeking help, and rebuilding trust, brick by painstaking brick. Elijah and Malachi's commitment to therapy, their willingness to be vulnerable with each other, showed us that true strength lies not in never falling, but in rising again, hand in hand with the ones who truly matter. Their kingdom, almost destroyed, was rebuilt on a foundation of honesty, communication, and a love that had proven itself unbreakable. As the first stars began to pepper the inky sky, tiny beacons of hope in the vast expanse, Elijah looked over at Malachi. His son, caught in the adventure of his book, was a portrait of quiet strength. The future, as always, remained unwritten, full of unknowns and new challenges, but one thing was crystal clear, etched into the very fabric of their lives. With Malachi by his side, Elijah knew, truly knew, that they could handle anything life threw their way. For in the heart of that young king, a new legacy had been forged, not of gold, but of unwavering love and courageous truth. The story of the young boy who stopped his dad's wedding had become a tale of resilience, love, and the unbreakable bond between a father and son. It was a reminder that sometimes the happiest endings come not from fairy tale weddings, but from the simple, profound love of family. And so, as the final stars twinkled into view, Reverend Elijah Dixon carried the sleeping Malachi into the house, laying him gently in his bed. He watched over him for a moment, a wave of profound gratitude washing over him. Ethan's courage and determination to do what was right not only changed his father's life, but also sent shockwaves through their entire community, reminding everyone that honesty and love should always come first. If Malachi's story resonated with you, if you've ever had to fight for the truth or rebuild from betrayal, hit that subscribe button. We're here to share more stories of resilience, of courage, of the unbreakable human spirit. And before you go, we'd love to hear from you. What is the most challenging betrayal you've ever faced? How did you find the courage to heal and rebuild? Share your thoughts and wisdom in the comments below. That's our interview for today at 7 p.m. with Ardeen McNinn. Your journey could be the next inspiration.